A deal signed in blood and laughter. The first thing Ambassador Elias Rourke noticed when stepping onto the Zel'tharak diplomatic station was the smell, something acrid, like burnt rubber and spoiled fruit. He wrinkled his nose and powered through it, keeping his expression neutral. Humans had only recently been granted a seat at the galactic negotiation table, and the last thing he wanted was to show weakness in front of the delegation awaiting him. The Zel'tharak were a peculiar species, to say the least. Towering insectoid creatures with glistening emerald exoskeletons, they regarded him with multiple unblinking eyes as their mandibles clicked in an intricate pattern. Despite their unsettling appearance, they were notorious for their rigid bureaucracy and obsession with legalistic intricacies. The trade agreement he had come to finalize was critical. Earth needed access to rare minerals from their worlds, and in exchange, the Zel'tharak sought human ingenuity in warfare tactics. A strange deal, but not one Elias was in a position to question. The lead diplomat, High Arbiter Zel'tharak Vel, stepped forward. He loomed over Elias, his body emitting a faint clicking sound that Elias had come to recognize as mild irritation. "You are smaller than expected, human," Zel'tharak Vel said, voice like sandpaper grinding against metal. "But no matter. The terms of our arrangement have been prepared for final review. We anticipate a fair exchange." Elias smirked. "Fairness is relative, Arbiter. But I assure you, humanity delivers on its promises." A low hum filled the chamber, perhaps the Zel'tharak equivalent of laughter. The other diplomats shifted in what seemed like amusement, their mandibles twitching. "Let us begin," Zel'tharak Vel said, gesturing toward a long, obsidian table. Elias took his seat, ignoring the discomfort of the stone-like surface beneath him. His assistant, a wiry woman named Tessa Nguyen, slid a holotablet in front of him, displaying the proposed terms. The legalese was mind-numbingly dense, filled with subclauses and conditional trade-offs. But buried in the language was something peculiar, an odd stipulation regarding the sealing of the deal. The agreement states that the signing ceremony must be conducted under sacred conditions determined by Zel'tharak custom, Elias read aloud. "Can you elaborate?" Zel'tharak Vel's mandibles twitched. "Our traditions demand that oaths of great importance be sealed with a ritual of mutual understanding." Elias frowned. "And what does that entail?" Zel'tharak Vel's compound eyes reflected the dim light ominously. "Blood and laughter." Tessa let out a barely stifled snort. "I'm sorry, did you say blood and laughter?" The Zel'tharak diplomat chittered approvingly. "Correct. A bond is strongest when forged in both suffering and joy. The ritual is simple, each party must share a moment of pain and a moment of mirth, ensuring that the agreement is bound in sincerity." Elias leaned back, considering. "And how, exactly, do you suggest we do that?" Zel'tharak Vel's antennae flicked in what Elias suspected was amusement. "Traditionally, we engage in a duel of mild injury, followed by a communal display of humor." "Do humans laugh?" Tessa rolled her eyes. "Oh, you have no idea." Elias chuckled. "All right. So, what? We punch each other, then tell jokes?" Zel'tharak Vel's mandibles clicked approvingly. A most efficient summary. Elias sighed. "Fine. Let's get this over with." The chamber shifted as several attendants brought forth ceremonial blades, wickedly curved, yet surprisingly small. Elias took one, testing the weight in his palm. The metal was cool, humming faintly with some kind of resonance. Zel'tharak Vel took the other blade and extended his arm, revealing a series of chitinous ridges. Without hesitation, he pressed the blade against his own limb, allowing dark blue ichor to seep from the wound. The Zel'tharak in attendance let out a collective trill of approval. Elias exhaled. "All right then." He rolled up his sleeve, placed the edge against his forearm, and Tessa groaned. "Oh, just let me do it." Before Elias could protest, she took the blade from his hand and made a quick, precise cut across his forearm. Blood welled up, and she gave him a dry look. "There. Now stop being dramatic." Zel'tharak Vel's mandibles twitched again. "Your assistant is efficient. We respect this." Elias resisted the urge to grumble as the attendant stepped forward, dabbing the wounds with a pungent-smelling ointment. The ceremony was only half complete, and the next part seemed even more bizarre. The laughter, Ktharak intoned. You must make us laugh, and we must make you laugh, ensuring mutual understanding. Tessa let out a bark of laughter. Oh, this is going to be fun. Elias shot her a look before turning back to the towering alien. Fine. I'll go first. He cleared his throat and, with the gravitas of a seasoned diplomat, said, Why don't aliens eat clowns? The Zel'tharak stared at him, unblinking. Silence hung in the air. Elias sighed. Because they taste funny. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, an eerie clicking sound filled the chamber. One by one, the Zel'tharak diplomats began to vibrate slightly, producing a rhythmic chittering noise. They're laughing, Tessa whispered, looking equal parts horrified and delighted. Holy hell, Elias, you made an alien species laugh at a dad joke. Ktharak composed himself. Acceptable. Now, our turn. The alien straightened, tilting his head slightly as he delivered his joke in perfect, unnerving monotone. Why did the planetary governor refuse the cyborg's request for a promotion? Elias raised an eyebrow. I don't know. Why? Because he was too robotic in his performance. Tessa blinked. Then she snorted. Then she burst out laughing, doubled over at the absurdity of the situation. Elias shook his head, chuckling despite himself. The room filled with the sound of alien chittering and human laughter. Ktharak's eyes gleamed. The bond is sealed. A scroll-like document was brought forward, and both parties signed, one in ink, the other in an elegant secretion that Elias chose not to question. As they rose from the table, Ktharak inclined his head. You are different from other species we have encountered, human. Elias smirked. You have no idea. The trade agreement was done. But the real challenges were only just beginning. The trade agreement was signed, but Elias Rourke had the distinct feeling that the real negotiations were just beginning. The ritual of blood and laughter had been concluded, but as he and Tessa stepped off the ceremonial platform, the room buzzed with the murmuring clicks of the Zel'tharak delegation. Something about the way Ktharak watched him sent a chill down Elias's spine. Ktharak approached, his multiple eyes glistening under the station's sterile lighting. Ambassador Rourke, there is one matter left to discuss. The logistics of execution. Elias exchanged a glance with Tessa, whose face had shifted into that unreadable expression she used when she sensed trouble brewing. We have agreements in place for trade routes and material exchanges, Elias said carefully. Is there an issue? Ktharak's mandibles clicked in a pattern Elias had begun to associate with amusement, except this time, it felt different. More predatory. There is no issue, Ambassador. But there is an expectation. Elias's gut twisted. Go on. We did not merely seek human strategies in theory. We wish to see them in practice. Elias exhaled slowly. You're asking for a demonstration. Ktharak tilted his head in acknowledgement. A proving ground has been prepared. Your military will showcase its ingenuity. In return, we will release the first shipment of iridium or without delay. Tessa scoffed. That wasn't part of the agreement. Ktharak turned his gaze to her. It was part of our expectations. Elias ran a hand through his hair. This wasn't the kind of complication he needed, but outright refusing the request would likely strain their newfound alliance. Fine, he said at last. Give us the details. Ktharak mandibles parted in what Elias could only describe as a smile. Excellent. The demonstration begins in 48 standard hours. We will transmit the parameters shortly. Elias sighed as he and Tessa exited the chamber. I have a bad feeling about this. Tessa snorted. You always do. And you're usually right. Back on their ship, the details of the test arrived. Elias reviewed them on the main console, eyes narrowing as he read. The Zel'tharak had designed a wargame scenario pitting human forces against simulated enemy forces using Zel'tharak combat drones. The goal: survive and demonstrate superior tactical ability. They're not just testing our strategies, Tessa muttered. They're testing our limits. Elias nodded grimly. And they want to see just how far we'll go. The proving ground was a barren moon on the edge of the system, stripped of atmosphere and riddled with craters. It was the kind of place where mistakes meant death. When Elias and Tessa arrived at the observation station, a group of high-ranking Zel'tharak officials awaited them. Zel'tharak Vel stood at the forefront, watching the preparation below. A dozen human strike teams had been deployed, their armored figures moving with the precision of well-trained soldiers. Opposing them were the Zel'tharak drones, tall, spindly constructs armed with plasma rifles and bladed limbs. They had the advantage of sheer numbers. The humans had only their wits. "The demonstration begins," Zel'tharak Vel announced. The battlefield erupted in fire and steel. The battlefield was chaos incarnate. Elias Rourke stood at the observation deck, his hands clenched into fists as the human strike teams fought for survival against the relentless waves of Zel'tharak combat drones. Plasma bolts streaked through the vacuum, illuminating the moon's cratered surface in bursts of violet and blue. The ground shuddered as an explosion sent a dozen drones careening through the air, their metallic bodies shattering on impact. Tessa's voice crackled through the comms. "Team Delta is pinned down. They need reinforcements, or we're going to lose them." Elias didn't hesitate. "Send in Bravo team. Tell them to flank from the ridge and cut off the drone's advance." From their vantage point, Zel'tharak Vel observed impassively, his multiple eyes scanning the battlefield. "Your soldiers exhibit adaptability. It is intriguing." Elias exhaled sharply. "That's what we do best." On the ground, Bravo team moved into position, their exosuits glinting in the pale light of the distant star. They fired a coordinated barrage at the drones, forcing them to divert their attention from Delta team. The momentary reprieve allowed Delta's soldiers to reposition and counterattack, reducing the enemy's numbers with brutal efficiency. "This isn't just a test," Tessa muttered. "They're studying us. Watching how we react under pressure." Elias nodded grimly. "Then let's give them something to think about." He switched frequencies. "Charlie team, deploy countermeasures. Let's see how their drones handle electronic warfare." Moments later, a pulse rippled across the battlefield. The nearest Zel'tharak drones stuttered mid-movement, their systems momentarily overloaded. The humans wasted no time exploiting the weakness, cutting them down before they could recover. Zel'tharak Vel's mandibles twitched. "An effective maneuver. Yet, limited. Your soldiers rely on unpredictability. This is both strength and vulnerability." Elias narrowed his eyes. "We improvise. We adapt. That's why we win." The Zel'tharak diplomat considered this for a moment before responding. "Your confidence is well-founded. But adaptability has limits. What happens when there is no path forward?" As if on cue, the battlefield shifted. A massive war drone, easily 5 times the size of any before it, emerged from beneath the moon's surface. Its sleek frame bristled with weaponry, its glowing red optics scanning for targets. The humans barely had time to react before it fired its primary weapon, a concentrated plasma blast that vaporized an entire ridge, wiping out a dozen soldiers in an instant. Tessa cursed. "That wasn't in the briefing." Elias gritted his teeth. "They wanted to see us pushed to the edge. Well, they got their wish." The human forces scrambled for cover, but the super-heavy drone advanced relentlessly. It deflected incoming fire with energy shielding, countered tactical maneuvers with swift recalibration, and moved with a terrifying precision that suggested a sophisticated AI at its core. Zel'tharak Vel watched Elias carefully. This is where most species falter. Elias turned to Tessa. "Get me a direct line to all strike teams." She nodded and relayed the order. Seconds later, the comms crackled with the voices of the human commanders. "This is Commander Hale, requesting orders. That thing is tearing us apart. Lieutenant Voss, taking heavy fire. We need an extraction or a miracle." Elias inhaled deeply. "No one retreats. Focus all fire on its optics. Blind it. Then we move." The soldiers obeyed without hesitation. Precision shots streaked toward the drone's glowing red eyes. One optic shattered, then another. The massive machine stumbled, recalibrating its systems in real time. Elias seized the moment. Bravo and Delta hit its joints with explosives. "Charlie, jam its sensors again. Make it blind, make it weak, make it ours." Explosions bloomed across the war drone's frame. It staggered, its shields flickering, its once perfect movements now jerky and erratic. The humans swarmed, pressing their advantage. Plasma fire lanced into its exposed joints, and with a final, deafening explosion, the war machine collapsed. Silence followed. Then, human cheers erupted across the comms. Elias turned to Zel'tharak Vel, his voice even. "Still think we falter?" The alien diplomat tilted his head, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "No. You do not falter. You persist. Even when the path forward is destruction." Elias smirked. "Welcome to humanity." Zel'tharak Vel's eyes gleamed. "Perhaps there is more to your species than we anticipated." The battle was over. But the war for respect had only just begun. The battlefield lay silent. Smoke and debris drifted through the air as the last embers of destruction flickered out. Human soldiers stood amidst the wreckage, weary but victorious. The Zel'tharak observers remained motionless, their compound eyes fixed on the carnage. In that moment, Elias Rourke understood that they weren't just evaluating tactics. They were evaluating something deeper, something intrinsic to the human spirit. Zel'tharak Vel turned to Elias, his mandibles clicking in contemplation. "You have demonstrated more than mere strategy. You have demonstrated resolve." Elias exhaled, tension slowly releasing from his body. "We don't back down. We don't break. When faced with destruction, we build a way forward. That's what makes us different." Zel'tharak Vel's antennae twitched as he considered the words. Most species faced with such adversity seek retreat or surrender. You do neither. Even when survival appears impossible, you press forward. "Why?" Elias smiled, weary but resolute. "Because we believe there's always a way. And when there isn't, we make one." A deep chittering sound rumbled from Zel'tharak Vel's chest, a sound Elias had come to recognize as approval. "This is what makes you dangerous. And formidable." The finality of the battle settled over the gathered parties. The demonstration had ended, and the results were undeniable. The Zel'tharak had come seeking human ingenuity, but they had found something more. Something they hadn't expected. Tessa, standing beside Elias, smirked. "So, does this mean we passed your test?" Zel'tharak Vel inclined his head. The test was never about passing or failing. It was about understanding. Elias crossed his arms. "And what have you understood?" Zel'tharak Vel's multiple eyes gleamed. "That the strength of your kind is not in your weapons or tactics, but in your refusal to accept limits." With a sweeping gesture, the Zel'tharak leader signaled the end of the engagement. The war drones were deactivated, the surviving human troops retrieved. A formal agreement was signed, its ink, both human and alien, sealed in tradition. The trade agreement would proceed, but it was no longer a simple transaction. It was a recognition. A mutual acknowledgement of worth. As they departed the moon, Tessa leaned back in her seat aboard the transport vessel. That was one hell of a way to close a deal. Elias chuckled. "Yeah. But it wasn't just about the deal." She raised an eyebrow. "Then what was it about?" He gazed out at the vastness of space, watching distant stars flicker in the darkness. "Respect. Understanding. The idea that no matter how different we are, the will to survive, to endure, transcends species." Tessa nodded, falling silent as she let his words sink in. As the human fleet left the system, the lesson of the battle remained. In the endless expanse of the universe, strength wasn't just about firepower or superior strategy. It was about adaptability, resilience, and the unyielding belief that there was always a way forward. And that, above all, was humanity's greatest weapon. The stars awaited, and humanity would meet them head-on. Not with fear, but with determination and laughter, forging their own destiny one impossible challenge at a time.